Petrol subsidy removal has come with a lot of consequences for Nigerians as they continue to grapple with the ripple effects. So despite the announcement by President Tinubu that subsidy is gone, Nigeria has continued to pay actually for what seems to be like subsidy, although with different nomenclatures over time, even as government considers selling crude oil in local currency by October to not only mitigate these effects, but as well to address the supply chain concerns. And so anyway, what exactly did President Tinubu approve to be paid for by the NNPC some days back? And what policy direction is this? Well, we'll be considering that in the course of this program. My name is Leah Katung-Babatunde, and I'm welcoming you to The Policy with Leah. The program continues shortly. We start off from the trend table.
The Implementation Committee on Crude Oil Sales in Naira says the commencement of Naira payments for crude oil sales to the Dangote refineries October 1, 2024. The Ministry of Finance, in a statement, described the move as a significant step towards ensuring the speedy realization of the Presidential Directive on Crude Oil Sales in Naira that is designed to enhance Nigeria's economic growth and development. Mr. Wale Edun, Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, presided over the crucial meeting in his office where Dr. Zach Adedeji, Executive Chairman of the Federal Inland Revenue Service FIRS and Chairman of the Technical Subcommittee, reported that the first PMS delivery from Dangote is expected next month under existing agreements. Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited (NNPCL) says it paid in total 1.17 trillion naira in taxes and royalties for the year 2023. Official documents show that the revenue realized from the crude oil sales in 2023 totaled 14.07 trillion naira. Audited financial statements for the fiscal year indicates that this represents an increase of 298.7% relative to the 3.52 trillion naira earned in 2022, as the company declared a revenue of 24 trillion naira. The Central Bank of Nigeria has announced a significant increase in remittance inflows, reaching $553 million in July 2024. It said the amount is a 130% increase from the corresponding period in 2023. A statement by the Apex Bank said the figure represented the highest monthly total inflows on record and reflects ongoing efforts by CBN to enhance liquidity in Nigeria's foreign exchange market. The statement read, "The CBN has reported a significant increase in remittance inflows, reaching $553 million in July 2024, a 130% increase from the corresponding period in 2023. This figure represents the highest monthly total inflows on record and reflects ongoing efforts by CBN to enhance liquidity in Nigeria's foreign exchange market." Nigeria has launched what is called the National Single Window NSW project that seeks to boost Nigeria's trade and economic growth. Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Mr. Wale Edun, who kicked off the launch of the transformative initiative, which aims to streamline trade processes, reduce bottlenecks, and increase transparency, positioning Nigeria for economic growth, said it is a key pillar in the federal government's strategy to improve trade and custom processes, reduce bottlenecks, and increase transparency within the nation's trade environment. He explained that the Federal Inland Revenue Service (FIRS) and the Nigerian Sovereign Investment Authority (NSIA) have been designated as the project's implementing agencies. The federal government has announced a hike in the cost of obtaining Nigeria's international passport from September 1, 2024. With this development, the 32-page passport booklet with 5 years validity, previously charged at 35,000 naira, will now be 50,000 naira, while 64-page passport booklet with 10 years validity, which was 70,000 naira, will now be 100,000 naira. However, the fees remained unchanged in the diaspora. The Nigerian Immigration Service said the move is part of efforts to maintain the quality and integrity of the Nigerian Standard Passport.
The return of petrol subsidy. What policy direction is that? Let's find out in this conversation with Dr. Samson Galadima Simon. May 29, 2023, upon assumption of office, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu made an announcement: subsidy is gone, and that, of course, has changed our lives for over a year now and counting. Nigeria made the highest payment despite that recently in 25 years of subsidy. The NNPC insists that it has not paid subsidy in 9 years, but it is handling PMS importation shortfalls between the company and the federal government. Dr. Samson Galadima Simon is the chief economist, ARKK Economics and Data Limited, Abuja. He is also a lecturer at the economics department of Bayes University, also in Abuja. He has a BSc, MSc, PhD, all in economics as well from the University of Abuja, with additional qualifications from School of Politics, Policy and Governance, SPGG, and Oxford University. It's like you've had so much rounds in Abuja, I will say, and of course, I'm welcoming him to consider the return of full subsidy. What policy direction is this? A lot of people are asking questions. From petrol subsidy, its removal, is it back, is it not back? To start with, can Nigeria, that is an oil-producing country, afford not to subsidize energy products?
That's a million-dollar question. The issue is, if the government, if the authorities refuse to subsidize, that might be too harsh on the citizens. That will make the cost of living to go through the roof, as we have seen in recent times, and it will be unbearable for majority of Nigerians. Mind you, we live in poverty central. So many Nigerians, hundreds of millions of Nigerians live below the poverty line, and if you don't subsidize, the situation will be far worse, and you may have a revolt in your hands. And maybe that was why the president reconsidered shortly after announcing on the day of inauguration that subsidy is gone. That was on the 29th of May. And they started paying subsidy just 2 or 3 months after, in August, because they realized that they had no choice than to pay the subsidy. So if you look at it, it's a balancing act. I know they want to free up resources to solve other problems, whether it's healthcare or education or infrastructure or even social safety nets to be provided. But in all honesty, you don't just by fear announce subsidy is gone. You need to do your homework, you need to do your research, you need to have a study with recommendations on exactly how to go about that. I think that was where the president or his team actually got it wrong. They didn't plan well. It was not properly thought out. So Nigerians are already going through what the Financial Times called the harshest cost of living crisis in recent times, or in a lifetime rather. So the authorities cannot afford not to pay subsidy, and that's why they've been paying, and it has been costing them. I know on paper in economics, they tell us that it's okay to remove subsidy instead of subsidizing the consumption of refined fuel. These resources are better used elsewhere. But in all honesty, actually reallocating these resources, assigning them, is easier said than done, like we have seen, particularly with the current situation.
It seems we're just hanging on to, clawing onto all the straws without any real certainty if it's going to work or not. Now, recently, just early this week, actually, the president announced, he gave an approval that the NNPC pays for what actually seemed like a subsidy. The news was around that it was subsidy, but then NNPC came out to say, no, it's not subsidy, actually, we're just paying difference. Does it matter? Is it an issue of language or application for you economists?
I think it's Bloomberg that always says context means everything. The current government is from the same party as the last one, and they had demonized subsidy in the sense that I remember the last president went as far as saying nobody subsidizes anybody that claims that it is a fraud. So it was difficult for him to accept that should be the one to pay subsidy that he called fraud and other names. And even the current president, I remember he wrote an op-ed during the 2012 Occupy Nigeria, the protests against subsidy, kicking against it. Even his assistant, Bayo Anuga, went as far as saying that subsidy should stay, but Jonathan should go. So for you to come and do the same thing that you accuse somebody and attacked somebody virulently of doing, it looks funny. So I think it's just denialism because it's clearly subsidy. It's the crux is that they're paying for subsidy. What is subsidy? Whether they call it subsidy or like Buhari called it under recovery, or what this current government is calling it, PMS, shortfall, or FX differential, is subsidy. What is subsidy? What's the actual open market price of a particular product? Maybe it's 1,000 naira. You ask somebody to sell it for less, and you pay the difference. That's subsidy. So it's a textbook definition of subsidy.
We have this issues also around the supply chain, and there's still queues all over the place, though it has abated, but we still have queues. And NNPC Retail, we've also just heard, it actually bought a company over, that company OVH, and then all of a sudden we're hearing that OVH has taken over NNPC Retail. Will this be having any kind of implication on the maybe supply or demand of the product, and how is this going to affect issues around transparency of the company? We know that government is the major shareholder of that company.
Well, everything around that arrangement is suspicious in the sense that you acquired the company and you didn't take over, you left the control to the initial owners, and now you're divesting away from it. Everything is suspicious. But one thing that we know for sure, people have been asking the NNPC to be the regulator that it is meant to be. Because if you're a participant and a regulator, there's this conflict of interest. So I think the best thing, the way they went around it, around this particular case, is suspect, it smells, it reeks of something of wrongdoing. But I think the best thing they should do is to divest from participating in the market while regulating at the same time. It's not the best thing. It doesn't augur well for the economy. It does not augur well for the market. I think they can do better.
In the past, we were made to believe that subsidy was just for a few persons, but clearly the fundamentals show that it is not for a few persons. And one of those pointers is the issue of electricity, for instance. A lot of people have to subsidize themselves with petrol to run their generating sets, either for their homes or their businesses. So if these two would need to work, because now we have not just about petrol, there's the issue of electricity. What kind of policy direction should the country approach that would ensure that it's a win-win for all?
That was the propaganda that we have been fed over the years, that the subsidies for refined fuel had actually benefited the few. And like we have seen in recent times, that's not actually correct. And I think we have one problem in Nigeria. We tend to be fixated on the costs of things. We forget the benefit side of things. And the truth is, on balance, you need to weigh and see the benefits and the costs. If the benefits by far outweigh the costs, no matter how much it is costing, even if it's costing half of the budget, if it's worth it, you keep it. But if you look at it, the costs by far outweigh the benefits, then that means the thing has to go. We didn't do our homework, like I rightly mentioned. That's why it's affecting us. There's no society on earth that does not subsidize one thing or the other. And the way you go about it is what really matters. I remember when this same set of people were protesting, and they said something that rings true now and rang true then, that instead of removing subsidy, you said the problem is that there is corruption there is lack of transparency. Why not go after the corrupt elements within the regime? Why not ensure that there is transparency? And they brought the idea of PIA in a bid to make the industry more transparent, NNPC in particular. Sadly, they have failed to, it seems they got cold-feeted about the floating of the NNPC, because that will require some corporate governance, transparency, and other characteristics that will really be good for the industry. But I think the government is actually benefiting, or some people are actually benefiting from NNPC being opaque and not being too transparent. And they are willing to make it that way, for it to remain that way, whether it's at the cost of the Nigerian, whether it costs the Nigerian people dearly or not.
So looking at the cost-benefit analysis you just given to me, and now, if we have a number of our refineries working, will that change the scenario? Will that bring down the market cost, considering the fact that these products have international benchmark rates? One
strategy that the president or the authorities failed to consider was, if you wanted, because when people are clamoring for subsidy to be reinstated, nobody is interested in subsidy. Demand for subsidy is a derived demand, in the sense that you don't want subsidy for the sake of subsidy. You want subsidy because it brings down the prices of refined fuel. So if there are ways that you can bring down the prices of refined fuel, please, by all means, use that without necessarily bringing back those subsidies. And one way is ensuring domestic refining and domestic supply of crude oil to refineries. If you do that, that means you don't subject the production of refined fuel in Nigeria to international forces, whether geopolitics or even foreign exchange risks, and even the FX difference they're talking about, that would completely be out.
A lot of Nigerians live by the day. So when the queues are there, the prices are high, how does this affect them?
Refined fuel is the lifeblood of the Nigerian economy, because our power supply is really abysmal. So people resort to generators, gasoline generators to get their electricity. And these generators are being powered by gasoline, which is part of the benefits of subsidy, and also for your vehicles too. And transportation. One of the reasons for food inflation being a problem and making Nigeria the least when it comes to affordability of food. Nigeria is the worst place on earth according to the Food Security Index, and for the availability to all these things, the removal of subsidy contributed to that. Because if we limit ourselves as a nation to rain-fed agriculture, is a serious problem, because that will not be enough for the population. And if we say irrigation, that will also require the use of fuel, which, because subsidy is gone now, it has become so expensive for the farmers to afford. And we talk about transportation too, from the farmland. Nigeria is one of the places that has the worst cases of post-harvest losses. And if you cannot easily transport, that will even make it worse. Then there's no sphere of life in Nigeria that's not affected by fuel. And now that they attempted the removal, we have seen the impact. It has really affected everybody. Even middle-class people in Nigeria are struggling, even the wealthy. So if somebody is well off and is struggling, you can only imagine somebody that before the removal was struggling. So it's far worse. There's hunger everywhere. One of the reasons is because the subsidy is gone, apart from the floating of the naira, and the floating of the naira actually exacerbated the problem.
Can Nigeria afford to say subsidy is back?
Subsidy has been back. But I know people, the expectation people have is that if subsidy is back, we go back to paying for 180
Exactly.
naira. No, that, I don't think that will happen, because if we are going to do that, maybe the entire budget will go into paying for that, and nobody will accept it. I don't see that happening. There's this popular saying that things in Nigerian economy do not work the way the textbooks say they should. But I beg to differ. We tend to do things the wrong way. I'm going to cite an example for you. In monetary economics, according to Milton Friedman, money supply is always and everywhere a monetary phenomenon, in the sense that it is produced only, can be produced only by more rapid increase in the quantity of money than in output. That's good to know. And you tackle money supply, you tame inflation by hiking interest rates. And when you do that, money supply decreases. And because you have less money now chasing goods and services, prices will go back to normal. In Nigeria, what we accept as the ideal is 6 to 9%. Globally, it's even 2%. So we have been hiking interest rates 800 basis points under the current central bank governor. But we have other ways that we're pumping and increasing the money supply. So we're just living in denial. And then somebody will come and say, you're hiking rates, we're not seeing results, this and that. Meanwhile, you're reducing money using one hand and adding it using the other one. So we're only deceiving ourselves.
Explain when you say we're reducing on one hand and adding on another hand.
Well, you hike interest rates so that cost of credit is higher, and that would dissuade businesses and individuals from borrowing to spend, right? But you are printing money. That's what they call ways and means. Is actually in the law establishing the central bank that if the government has shortfall of revenue, they have deficits and they need urgent financing, that the CBN can backstop that temporarily within a particular year, within a fiscal year, right? And that has to be paid back. It's not meant to be a permanent thing. And if it's not paid back, you don't loan the government money again. But under Buhari, it just ballooned. They just abused it. They printed more than 30 trillion and they refused to pay it. And the law was very explicit that do not securitize this. They have gone ahead to securitize. That's how lawless sometimes it can be in this country. And then we turn around to be blaming the system or the theory of economics. So you cannot just be hiking rates and say, all right, there's so much. I remember the last substantive central bank governor immediately was complaining that there was so much money in circulation. And that was one of the reasons he brought those policies. But sadly, you're complaining there's so much money in circulation, or currency in circulation in particular, part of the money supply. Meanwhile, you're printing 30 trillion. So I don't know. We are just deceiving ourselves. We know the right thing. And I believe that's basic economics. So somebody of a central bank governor knows that. But we tend to live in denial. You just want to punish people by saying, all right, don't take that money. Meanwhile, the main issue is not only the currency in circulation, it's the entire money supply that is a problem. Recently, they amended the law to increase, it was 5% in the law initially for ways and means. They increased it to 10%. I feel we should even scrap it, because how many of us have the discipline? We know that we need money and it's within our power to just print, that will not print.
So there should be more harmony between the fiscal and monetary authorities.
Of course. Those are not the only economic policies, but those are the most important ones. The fiscal side and the monetary side. And the monetary authorities, I think, have been trying to do their best. They have been doing a lot of things that on paper should move the needle. The fiscal side might not have done the same thing, and there's a need for the fiscal side to make the monetary side halfway. I don't think they have really been doing that. For inflation, for example, it's basically not within the purview of the central bank when it comes to money, when it comes to food. It should be the fiscal side. How much have the fiscal authorities been doing to ensure that there is enough supply of food? I was listening to the coordinating minister for the economy, and he was talking about cutting down post-harvest losses and increasing production. But what exactly have we done to cut down post-harvest losses? I don't think there's anything that has been done, or at least anything that actually moves the needle. So we need to be intentional about everything. The last time they just threw money at problems, that will not work. You need to be intentional. You need to go after results. The results are what really matter, not the efforts. I think we're fixated on efforts, and I think that's the wrong thing to do.
Okay, I must sincerely thank you, Dr. Galadima, for making our time for this conversation.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
My name is Aldo Mekori.
Keep watching The Policy with Leah.
It aims to provide policymakers an opportunity to explain their policies in a way that members of the public affected by those policies can understand and engage with those policies.
Keep watching The Policy with Leah.
Simplify This is next, and from there we head to the markets. The much we can take on this episode. For more on rates across the country, do well to log on to our sister website. It is www.marketnigeria.tv.com. We have all the details there for you. And don't forget that Saban Media Services on YouTube is their channel to follow, subscribe, like, and leave your comments, questions, and suggestions, because we value them to serve you better. And until I come your way again, same time next week, be safe out there. And I say, God bless Nigeria.